Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Usman. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yes, Usman, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm here. Let the discussion continue, and maybe I'll come up with some questions.
Super.
Would you like to introduce yourself, Usman? What do you do? How you heard about us? And what are the questions, few questions, if you have in your mind?
Okay.
Okay, so
there was a session. Yeah. Can you hear me now? I don't have a very good internet connection. I am a certified Scrum Master. Got certified last year, and as that was after getting the training organized by PASE with Zia Malik in Lahore.
Cool.
Good. We have Shehryar with us as well. Shehryar, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Shelia. I am from Pakistan, and I am working as a backend team lead in Deciders Lab. Deciders Labs is actually a company, startup company, UK based, and they are working on AI, data science, and human engaged sensors.
Neat.
And yeah.
Cool. Nice to meet you. I'm Jack.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah. I live in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I'm also planning to come to Austin in May. So
Cool.
let's see how Texas is there right now.
Yeah, it's about 5 hours away. You're coming for the global gathering then, right?
No, I have some other trainings to take, but let's see if I can make it for the gathering as well. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, my internet is very bad today. Right. Okay, so Huram, you already have started the recording, right?
Yes, Jack said that it will be good to record and
Yes.
nice moments. Yeah. Okay.
That's good. So we have Abdul, Shahryar, Usman on the call, so we can ask those guys if they have any topics to talk about, because we don't have huge number of participants, so we can ask them individually rather than using the tool. So guys, what would you like to discuss with Jack today? So Jack has joined us today from USA. We are really thankful for his time. Jack is lean trainer. Jack, you want to give yourself introduction?
Sure. Let me share something real quick. Can you guys see the, hold on, let me make that bigger. Can you guys see that?
Yes, it's visible.
Yes.
Okay, so that's me. So my
Nice.
tagline is that I help people make better decisions and find better solutions. Right? So if you're a Scrum Master, your job as a servant leader is to help 2 or more people find their agreement or their solution. Right?
Can I interrupt you, Jack? I feel like you're sharing the presenter view, not the actual presentation view.
Okay,
I
thanks.
can see all the times and end of slide, all those things. So it might be good to perhaps change
Let's see if I can correct that. Go back here. And it doesn't show me how to change that.
So it might be that you start your presentation. Yeah, as you start your presentation, and then you can come back to Zoom, and then when you share it, and it will show you the presentation that you want to share.
Let's see if it works this time. No, it didn't work. It didn't.
Hit the F5 key.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to do anything. Show taskbar. No. Display settings. There we go. Does that help better?
Yes, it is. It's working now. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
That's
okay,
good,
so as you can see, I have a bunch of certifications. So what that means is that I've read a lot of books, and I've taken a lot of tests. I've taken a lot of courses, and supposedly I understand the theory, right? That's what that means. Doesn't necessarily mean that I know everything about your context, or that I've experienced everything out in the field that maybe even you have. Everybody experiences life differently and has different understanding from their experiences. But I have done quite a bit of studying, and I've done quite a bit of practice out in the field, and I do have a certain level of understanding of certain things. You'll notice on the right up here, all of this stuff is associated with Scaled Agile Framework. I'm an instructor for 7 of the classes. And then you'll notice on the left, there's the Scrum Alliance stuff. So I'm an instructor for the Scrum Foundations. I'm also a registered education provider for the Scrum Alliance. So I teach 3 courses under the Registered Education Provider program. And then I also teach under IC Agile, and I have some certifications in facilitation and coaching from those guys. And then I'm also a TBR, a training from the back of the room practitioner. And that's important to me because all of the courseware that I've created supports TBR. I've done a lot of transformations or transitions, if you'd like. Not everybody is really doing transformations. A lot of them are doing transitions over time. And I've worked in very, very large companies and very, very small companies. So the biggest company I've worked for that I've done a transformation is Walmart. I led a dozen coaches and 24 directors and senior directors for a year doing a transformation using Scaled Agile Framework. I started out as a developer. You'll notice at the very, very bottom where it says other activities in the left box there, it says previously a dev, BA, QA, et cetera, et cetera. So I've done a whole bunch of different kinds of roles outside of Agile before I even got into Lean and Agile. And with that, happy to answer any questions or share anything that I know.
I must say that there are lots of certifications and lots of time and effort going into there. I have never seen someone with so much certifications.
I have friends with even more. I have this buddy, his name's Shailesh Thakur. He's an Indian guy, and he just collects them. He just collects them. I think he has like 40 different certifications or something like that. It's outrageous.
Wow.
And there are lots of people that have many, many more than I do. Certifications, people get different certifications for different reasons.
Yes.
And we can talk about that if you'd like, but the certifications there are reasons to get certifications, and there are reasons why you may not choose to go and get a certification, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a question from the participant. I just cut it off.
Yeah, I was going to ask, it caught my eye that you were in QA. I've also been in QA role for the past year, and I was, and that's the time when I went for the CSM certification, but it didn't quite. I mean, I've been struggling with trying to apply it in my day-to-day job. How did you? I mean, what would you advise how to apply it in the QA function if it is at all possible?
Well, it really depends on what framework you're using. What framework are you using? What is your context?
So my job has been to, so there are some softwares in-house, built in-house for our own teams within the organization for giving 24/7 support to our clients. And my job was to, find bugs in it and report them and get them fixed. That's it. And so I think, yeah, that's about it. I tried to apply sprints to it in the sense that I started working with a project manager. His job was to there were a couple of development guys who reported to him, and so actually I started feeling as if he's that project manager is the Scrum manager, and I'm as the product owner, because I would identify bugs and ask them to get them fixed. And the project manager would, hold daily 15-minute Scrum meetings with his dev guys, and they would, pick up some of the bugs every day, and they would start working on it. And they would, at the end of, in the next sprint, they would, next day, the sprint meeting, the next day, they would tell me what has been done, what has not been done. So this is the way we've been, managing our work for the past year. But it doesn't neatly fit into the Agile framework, I think, because we don't have any shippable product at the end of the sprint. We don't always adhere to the sprint lengths. We don't always adhere to the sprint meetings time bar. So I think, but it gets the work done, and we're comfortable with it. What is your opinion about that?
Okay, so let's start with some basics, okay? Because everybody gets really confused about the basics, and then when they're confused about the basics, then they don't know what good looks like, okay? So if I were to say to you, if I were to ask you, what is Agile? How would you answer? What would you say?
So what I've gathered during the certification is that, and reading on it, is that Agile is actually agile. I mean, you have to be flexible and quick. That's
Okay.
the essence of it.
Okay.
So I guess trying to do work in iterations, and the iterations that result in tangible, improvements.
Okay. So if you look in the, I'm sorry, you're cutting out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you were cutting out. I didn't hear that last part. I'm sorry.
No, I was pretty much done. Yeah, I just said that it's agile is two things in my mind. One is doing things quickly and some tangible results.
Okay. All right. So Agile is, if you look in the dictionary, in the English dictionary, and you look up Agile, dictionaries always give synonyms for things, right? For words. And if you look in there, one of the words that is used as a synonym for Agile is nimble. And there's this guy named Craig Larman. He's the guy who invented the large-scale Scrum framework. And I heard him say that Agile is the ability to be nimble, to be able to turn on a dime for a dime. That's Agile. It's kind of like a ballerina, right? who is nimble,
Makes sense.
right? So I'm gonna share with you. I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Hold on. There we go. Can everybody see the manifesto for Agile software development? That is Agile. That is Agile. That is the definition of Agile. Okay. So these are the values. This is the value set associated with Agile. Okay. Now, hold on for a second. Let me move it over to my other screen so that I'm looking into the camera also. Okay, so the stuff on the left is more important than the stuff on the right. The stuff on the right has to enable the stuff on the left. It says over, it doesn't say instead of. So that means that we are going to do some of the stuff on the right, but if they are in conflict with anything that's on the left, then we change the stuff on the right. That's how the value system works in Agile software development. Okay. Now,
All right.
Now,
By the way, I can't see the screen. I just see a divider.
you can't see the screen?
There are black screen. Yeah, black screen. Is everybody
Hold
else?
on just a second. Let me see. Can you see it now?
No.
Yes, it's visible now. Yeah, I can
Can you see the
that.
manifesto for Agile
yeah, I
software
can see
development?
Sure can.
Okay, great. So, so here, here's the stuff on the left. This is the stuff we want to focus on, but the stuff on the right, processes and tools, documentation, contracts, following a plan. Those things, part of that we're going to do as long as they're not in conflict with the individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, and responding to change. So this is the start of what's called the Agile Mindset.
Right.
This is where it starts.
Yeah.
So when you ask me the question, I'm in QA, and we're doing this and we're doing that. Is this good? Should I be doing something different? How can I improve? The first thing I would ask you as a coach would be, well, are you following the value systems? Do you feel that you're following the value system of the manifesto? And then, of course, the manifesto also has 12 principles, right? So you go down here and it lists the 12 principles. And I'm going to go to that tab. Can everybody see the principles tab now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay,
Yes,
so here are the 12 principles associated with Agile. And so I would ask the question again, what you're doing, does this support the principles of Agile? Yes or no? And if not, what do you want to do about it?
right.
Okay,
And
now,
the
things that you were talking about, having pulling from concepts that come from the Scrum framework, and not doing it, you're basically not doing Scrum, okay? You're pulling some ideas from the Scrum framework, but you're not doing Scrum. And the reason I know that you're not doing Scrum is because, number one, you have someone called a project manager, and there is no project manager on a Scrum team. Okay?
Yeah,
And yeah, go
that's
ahead.
just his title, but the way he acts is like a Scrum manager, I think.
Well, there is no Scrum manager in Scrum.
I mean, sorry, sorry.
There are no managers at the team level in Scrum. So I'm going to go to another tab, and this is at the Scrum Alliance, and this is where you can download the Scrum Guide, which shows you how to do the Scrum framework, right? So I'm going to click on this. This is the last one was November 2017. That was the last one. And I'm going to bring up the guide. Okay, the guide is like 17 pages or something like that long. And hold on, let's bring that up. It's coming up. Oh, it's 19 pages long, excuse me, including the cover and the last page. And so, you know, here's the table of contents. And you'll see that Scrum itself has its own values. It designates who's on the team. It designates the events. It designates the Scrum artifacts. So, you know, based on that, it is a framework. Now, if you go, or I'm going to go to the very last page of the guide. Okay, hold on for a second. Let's see.
So I'd like to say in defense that actually it was a slip of the tongue. I meant to say Scrum Master. The guy actually, you know, performs the role of a Scrum Master, but it's just his job title that is given to him by the organization, which is project manager. Otherwise, he is practically, you know, behaving like a Scrum Master.
Okay, he's behaving like one. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's go back and I just want to show this right here. It says Scrum is free and offered in this guide. Scrum's roles, events, artifacts, and rules are immutable. That means they cannot be modified, and also implemented only, although implementing only parts of Scrum is possible, the result is not Scrum. Scrum exists only in its entirety and functions as well as a container for other techniques, methodologies, and practices. So if you choose to do Scrum, then basically you follow this guide. If you choose to do something else beyond that, then it stops really being Scrum. Okay? So the question that I would ask is, in your context, has the team and the organization decided to do Scrum? Or have they decided to be Agile? Those are two different goals.
I think in my case, in my example, yes, they are trying to be more agile than adhering to the framework of Scrum.
Great. Or adding anything on top of the framework, whichever framework you decide to use, whether it's Scrum or SAFe or LESS or Nexus or methods like XP or Kanban. Regardless, you have to, when you're doing the implementation, you have to go back to the values and principles of Agile and ask, are we being Agile? And you'll find that if you don't do that, then you're always going to go back to, well, you know, am I doing it the right way according to the framework? And that's not the goal in itself. The goal is not to follow a framework. The goal is to be Agile. Okay?
I have one question here. You mentioned about to follow all the rules, and the rules are immutable.
Yes.
What about the teams who are using Scrum-But, Scrum-And? I hope you might have heard about those.
It's not Scrum.
But
So
is this still working for the teams then?
Yeah, let me explain what a framework is. A framework is something that requires cohesion. And what that means is that all of the parts, which are identified in the contents. Let's go back to the contents here. Okay. So the contents here show, just a second. The contents have the values, the team roles, the team, the Scrum events, the artifacts. These are the various parts, and they are cohesive because they are interconnected. In other words, if you take one of them out, then the framework doesn't work the way that it was supposed to work anymore. They're interconnected and they're supposed to work together, and that's what makes it a framework, because of that cohesion. So I'll give you a comparison. Kanban, which is a method, is not restrictive in this way. In fact, Kanban, the mantra for Kanban is, we start with where you're at. You don't change the roles, you don't change the processes, you don't change the events. None of that stuff changes. But in Scrum, which is a framework, you do, because it requires a cohesion of those things for it to work properly. Okay, so coming back to the original question, which was, I'm a QA guy on a Scrum team, right? So let's go and take a look at what the Scrum guy, let's say that you want to do Scrum. Okay, you say, I want to do Scrum, and that's going to help me get towards being Agile. And of course, being Agile, I have to follow the values and the principles. And Scrum being a framework, it requires cohesion, so I need to make sure that all this stuff is correct, right? Okay, so let's see. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, all right, so they're self-organizing. The development team is self-organizing, right? Let's see. There are, let's see, what other things are here? They're self-contained. Only members of the development team create the increment. So if you're going outside of the team to complete something, to make it done, that would be an anti-pattern. And let me define what anti-pattern is. An anti-pattern is something that may have a negative impact on the outcome that you're seeking. It may or may not. In other words, you know, people make decisions to do things all the time for different reasons. And sometimes these things are patterns that could affect the proper implementation of a framework or following the Agile values and principles. So when I see something that is an anti-pattern, I might say, you know, that smells bad. I don't know if it's going to have a bad outcome, but we probably want to take a look at this. Or because I've seen so much of this stuff over the years, I'll hear something and it's kind of like a dog whistle, and I'll hear somebody saying something, and I'll know that it's an anti-pattern in behavior towards being Agile. And I pick up on this because, you know, I know the theory, I know the practice, and I've gone and done it, and then I've gone and coached and trained it all these years. And so I've seen this over and over and over again. And so I don't say the anti-pattern is bad. I say, I wonder why they're doing that. And I wonder what the impact is going to be on being Agile. Okay, so there are no titles in Scrum, right? So for the development team members, regardless of the work that they're doing. So you're called a developer, regardless if you're doing development work, you know, programming, testing, analysis. It doesn't matter. If you're on the development team of the Scrum team, you have no title. Okay, so if there are people that have a single expertise, they're still called developer.
Right, that
because
clarifies a lot.
Scrum recognizes no subteams. That's the next bullet here. It recognizes no subteams, regardless of what the folks are doing. Okay, and then it goes on to say that you can have specialized skills, but the accountability is to the entire team. So often what you'll see in Scrum-But and Scrum-And and all that is, or Scrum-Fall, is waterfalling within the sprint, which basically means that you're doing handoffs. Now that's not what Scrum is at all. Scrum is a collaborative work agreement and environment. Right. So it's not the relay race. The original term Scrum comes from an article in January of 1986 from the Harvard Business Review. and the article is entitled "The New Product Development Game," and it was written by two Japanese researchers who saw this pattern of swarming in software development, and they called it a scrum. They had stand-ups, which are, you know, our scrum meeting, okay? And so the Japanese actually invented Scrum. It wasn't Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. They're the inventors of this framework, but they basically took all of the research that these two Japanese guys did, and this was being done at several Japanese software development companies back in the early 80s. Okay, so Scrum's been around. The idea of Scrum, the technique, the pattern has been around for a long time, and it's all about swarming. So if you're doing the relay race where a developer is handing off to a QA person,
Yeah.
or a front-end developer is handing off to a back-end developer, handing off to a DBA, handing off to a QA person, that's not Scrum.
But that's logical. I mean, if you don't do that, things
What do you
won't
do?
progress very quickly. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, what do you do if you don't do that?
What if,
So
what
I'll tell you what you do.
end
You
up
have to,
picking up the testing?
swarm. You have to
Yeah.
swarm, and collaboration is not where 5 people have their own queues of work and then they coordinate. That's not collaboration. That's coordination. Collaboration is where 2 or more people work on something together side by side. So there are several different ways to do that, methods to do that. And let me give you some examples. One is called pair work. This is where you have people with dissimilar expertise that are literally sitting right next to each other. And as one does one thing, the other does the other. So for example, let's say I'm a developer and you're the QA person. I write a little bit of code, you write the automated test script, and then we test it right then to see if it fails or not. And we do this back and forth, back and forth. That's called pair work. Then you have something called pair programming. Now, pair programming comes from extreme programming. And it's a method technique coming from extreme programming. And there are 2 different kinds of pair programming, but the one that most people use is called strong pairing. And one person is the navigator who tells the other person, who is the driver, what to type. So for example, if you have 2 developers, the navigator, who is a developer, would tell the driver, who is a developer, what to code. And it could be a script for a test script, an automated test script, or it could be programming. Okay. The third way is something called mob programming. And mob programming expands on to pair programming, but it's in slightly larger groups. And it has, this technique has been around for a while. It's, I think Woody Zuhl's been doing this for like 10 years now. The way that mob programming works is it's in groups of 4 or 5 people. That's the perfect size mob. And you have a driver, just like as described as before for pair programming. You have a primary navigator, and then everybody else is supporting navigators. And every 7 to 15 minutes at the discretion of the team, you rotate into a different position. So this is used not only to keep the ball moving, just like in rugby, but also to do transfer of knowledge. So for example, if I had a front-end developer, a back-end developer, DBA, a QA person all on the same team, and we were working on front-end work, I would put the front-end developer who knows front-end coding better than anybody in the lead navigator seat. And then I would put anybody else that was weaker in the driver's seat. And if I was doing back-end work, you know, if we were working on something that was back-end work, we would put the back-end developer, who's the strongest in that area, in the lead navigator seat, and somebody that was weaker in the driver's seat. And if we were writing automated test scripts, we would put the QA engineer in the navigator seat and one of the other team members in the driver's seat, because this is the way that we do cross-fertilization of knowledge, which is a requirement for Scrum to work. And we know this because that comes directly from the article back in 1986 from the research. We know this. So, you know, self-organization requires three things. It requires that there be cross-fertilization of knowledge. It requires that there be I'll let you read the article. There's a whole bunch of things in there. Okay, I'm not going to take the time espousing on that, but these are the kinds of things that actually make Scrum work. So if the objective, the outcome that you're seeking is to be agile, and you're following a framework, only half part of the framework, it's not likely you're going to be agile. You're not going to get the outcome that you seek. Okay, so this is why only 10% of Scrum teams out there are high-performing teams. It's because they're really not doing Scrum. They're doing something other than Scrum.
Yeah, that makes sense actually, because if there's not cross fertilization of knowledge of various aspects of work, then it's basically you're introducing bottlenecks.
That's right. You have it exactly right. So imagine that you have a Kanban board or a Scrum board, and everybody stays in their own column worth of work. Things start to build up in one column, and that means that things don't get done. And so when you start pairing, that loosens up. When you put WIP limits on a column, and then people start doing things other than their primary expertise, things loosen up and you get flow. But why not just start in a mob of 4 or 5 people and all move the ball down the field like rugby, just like it was intended from the very beginning? That's the way it's supposed to work. So, you know, these are techniques that you might consider. And the Scrum Master, you know, this project manager who is acting like a Scrum Master, who doesn't really know what it means to be a Scrum Master and doesn't know what Scrum really is. I mean, you can go to a 2-day course and not understand what Scrum is. You know, the CSM exam is not very hard. 99% of the people that take it pass it. So it's not like you're an expert when you come out of a CSM course. You're just not. And so you know, people run back to their teams and they start, you know, doing these different practices without understanding why they're doing it in the first place. And that's one of the reasons why they don't get out of it what they really want. They actually don't even know why they're doing it in the first place. They think, oh, productivity and efficiency. No, it's to be more agile. That means to be nimble. That means to be able to change on a dime for a dime. That's what agile is. What do we have to do? What practices or methods or techniques do we have to do in order to achieve that? That's what we're trying to do in agile.
Yeah, I understood. And I think a component of to make this all successful, one aspect is to have top management buy-in as well, because otherwise what ends up happening is that the top management keeps viewing each member of this Scrum team as a specialist, and they evaluate the person on his performance on that particular area of his expertise within the cycle of development. And that ends up ruining everything. Because
Yeah.
if you get reprimanded at the end of the day for not doing something, and even, I mean, the management has visibility into who has been doing which work. And if your testing work has been shared by 2 other members of the team,
Right.
you don't get the full credit. And
Yeah.
then you get a low performance rating, and then you get reprimanded by the management. So
Yeah,
unless they're on
it's a
board.
big problem. So down here, so what you're looking at right here is at scaledagileparamework.com. Can everybody see that? And you'll notice down here, there's an Agile HR Playbook and a white paper.
Right. This is
Okay.
going to be
So when you're doing a transformation in Agile, it's more than just the team that has to go through this transformation. It's the organization. And that means HR has to be involved, and policies and performance kind of stuff has to change. So with that, I'd like to just share with you that all of the major consulting companies like Deloitte and the rest, they're all doing away with the annual performance review. They've done away with it. And the reason is because it gets in the way of the team working together, the people on the team working together. Because if you are doing individual performance reviews, then everybody is out for themselves. And if you have metrics associated with the performance review, then people become selfish in sharing knowledge and working together. They don't do it. So you don't have a team, you have what's called a work group, with everybody having their own queue of work and no team effort at all. And again, Agile and Scrum are team-based approaches. So yeah.
Yeah, so to do the team reviews?
So there are multiple ways to validate whether or not the team is delivering, or the organization is delivering, or a group of teams, what you would call a program, are delivering. And it depends on which framework you are using, which would allow you to have different kinds of metrics to do that. Now, after I say that, the first thing that mostly comes into people's minds are, yeah, but how do I get promoted, or how do I get a pay raise, or that type of thing? So there's a guy named Jürgen Apelo. He is he's an author and a trainer, an educator, coach, and he wrote a book called Management 3.0. And in his book, he actually has a spreadsheet that helps figure that out. So I would direct that to you from, you know, how much, if I was a manager, right, in an organization, how much should I pay my people? How much should I pay them? And so Jürgen has come up with a good idea to do that. And really, at the end of the day, you have to pay people enough money so that the issue of money is off the table and they can focus on the work. If you don't pay people enough, then what happens is that they're always going to be thinking about how to get more money, and they're not going to be thinking about the work. And if they're not thinking about the work, they're probably not going to be thinking about the teamwork either. Okay, so I would refer you also to another book by Daniel Pink. It's called Drive. And there's a really good video on YouTube from Daniel Pink on what he found in the book, you know, what he wrote about in the book. And really what the book is about is what motivates us, right? So in the old days, the thing that management always thought that people were motivated by either the carrot or the stick. Now that analogy is associated with horses. You're either going to give the horse a carrot, or you're going to whip them. Now, I'm not a smaller, slower, less smelly horse that needs to be given a carrot or whipped, okay? And Agile doesn't support that mentality at all.
unless you are
Okay.
a freeloader.
Right? So Daniel Pink says, well, you know, this comes out of, you know, the Industrial Revolution, from Taylorism, you know, and economists over the years, they always thought that, you know, this is how to motivate people. And it was just people's opinions of that this is the right way to do it. And you know what, for work that had nothing to do with thinking, no cognitive skill at all, maybe the carrot and the stick would work. It worked on slaves, okay? You know, if you just whip the slave, they would pull harder, or they would focus in on what they're doing, but it was manual labor. Well, we're not slaves anymore. We're not in the Industrial Revolution anymore. In fact, the workers are now knowledge workers who know how to do things that management cannot do themselves. So, for example, a development director at Walmart would most likely not be able to do the kind of coding that their own people could do. They couldn't go and sit with a member of the team and show them how to code. They couldn't do it, okay? Because they probably haven't even touched code in 5 years or more, right? If you're a director. So how can you motivate someone with the carrot and the stick when you know better, when and you know, for that person, and that person knows more about what you're doing than you do. So for this reason, instead of it being the carrot and the stick, which is extrinsic motivation, managers have to create an environment by which people feel motivated. And this is called intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is associated with autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So a manager is not going to manage people anymore. They're going to manage systems and environments, and they're going to create an environment by which people feel that they have autonomy, they feel that they have the ability to gain mastery, and autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And there has to be some type of purpose in the work. And this is what drives high-performing teams. That's how to scale from just one person into 5 people or 9 people or teams of teams or teams of teams of teams. Okay, so that's how that works.
On the onset, it doesn't look like a practical goal to achieve, because what about the freeloaders, and what about those directors?
Don't you love freeloaders? Let's talk about freeloaders first, then we'll talk about the other folks. I love freeloaders. Why do you think that they're freeloaders?
There would be some people in your team who are not subject matter experts, just like you gave the example of directors who do not.
They're not on the team.
They're not on the team, all right.
No, a Scrum team consists of the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the developers. And the development team, which is where you should be concerned in this part of the conversation, they're all developers. So do you have people on your team that are not developers? On the development team?
Yeah, we have.
Who do you have? What kind of person do you have on there?
Well, for example, I am a testing person, and I do not do any development. I just do.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Are you a manual tester?
Yeah, I do user acceptance testing for functionality and stuff like that. So I don't have any coding expertise. I used to have, but have been out of touch for such a long time. And there are other guys who are expert at programming. I just tell them these are the things that should be there in the user interaction that are missing, and you should add them, and they go back to the drawing board and fix those problems.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Who's the product owner?
the product owner would be the person who brings in, so that would be my boss, I guess, who brings in entirely new features. I mean, he requests for new features and
Are they a
radical
stakeholder or are
modifications.
they a product owner? Is your boss, is that boss working every single day with the developers?
No, he
They're,
works with the management, the rest of the management, the
yeah,
people who use the systems ultimately.
yeah. So I would assume, I don't know your current context, but I would start asking questions about who's really fulfilling the role of the product owner. And I think if we had if we investigated that, we would find that you probably don't have someone that is designated as the product owner who is fulfilling the responsibilities and has the authority of the product owner. And this is very typical in many organizations. You know, they say, oh, we're going to go do Scrum, but you know, you have these three roles and they're not clearly defined who the people are, what the responsibilities are, what's the authority is of each one of these people. And so what ends up happening is that you're not doing Scrum. And if you're not doing Scrum and you've chosen Scrum to help you get towards being Agile, then you don't end up being Agile. Okay, so you know, go back to the fundamentals again, right? So we'll go back to the Scrum Guide, right here. Go back to the Scrum Guide, and hold on, let me go back up to.
Okay. In the meantime, guys, if you have any further questions, so just to be mindful that we have few minutes left, or we are going towards the end of the session. So questions are
and by
welcome.
the way, I'm happy to extend it.
Okay.
For
all right.
a long
Okay.
period
Good.
of time.
Sure. That's very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
I'm not constrained in that way today, so don't worry about that.
Okay. Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Yeah, I'm happy to help. So just to finish my thought, you know, you got a product owner, developer, Scrum Master. You go to each one of these sections and see what the responsibilities and the authority is for each one of them, and ask yourself, do we have a person that's doing that? Are they doing those things?
No,
And if the
I
answer
mean,
is no,
no.
then the outcome that you seek is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not telling you have to use Scrum. You know, you could use Kanban, you could use a mixture of Scrum and Kanban, but you know, you gotta decide what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. There has to be some reason to it. And if you're going to use a framework, it's cohesive, right? So all the parts are interconnected. You need to make sure they're all working properly. Okay. All right, what other questions are there?
Thanks, Jack.
So, so Jack, after hearing all the discussion, some questions appear in my mind. We read the article in which the statement has been written that in Scrum, the team is self-organized. So,
Yes.
yeah, the self-organized mean the team. What I in my company I feel from the statement is that the team has already developed backlog, and the team is fully have freedom to pick up the user stories and collaborate with each other and develop a software and release a software after a couple of days or after end of sprint as decided. So the question of mine is that the self-organized mean is to pick up the user stories from the backlog, or the self-organized mean every developer will communicate on the features, on new features, refinement of features, and then he will refine the features and he will develop or write user stories, and he will add the acceptance criteria of user stories, and then he will perform the task, and then he will release the product. It's mean our team member is working like an army and doing everything by himself. So if you will explain the self-organized term, then I
Yep.
think, yeah, that's my question. What is the real meaning of the scope of self-organization.
Sure. So there's a concept of pull versus push. Okay. If I'm management, I'm either pushing stuff in and telling you what to do, how to do it, or I'm pulling you into an environment by which you can decide what's the best way of doing things. So let's look at Scrum, for example, and the application of self-organization in Scrum. There are specific events that occur in Scrum that require self-organization to occur. Okay, so let's also talk a little bit about the difference between, or the synergy between self-organization and collaboration. Okay? They're kind of connected, because collaboration means there are two or more people working together to move the ball down the field, right? That's the basic concept, the rugby concept.
Done.
Okay? Self-organization could be just for one person, or in the concept of or implementation of Scrum, it's going to be done in a collaborative way. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind, because if you are facilitating any of the Scrum events, you want to create an environment that is collaborative. And when you make decisions on how things should be done, and by the way, again, the Scrum guide is like, it's a framework, right? The Scrum framework is a framework, so it's incomplete. It doesn't tell you how to do a lot of things. And the way that it's written, sometimes you have to go and experiment and see how to do it, how to figure out how to do it. And there are books on how to do it that are outside of the framework, and you can talk to, that's why there are coaches, right? Okay, so let's talk about sprint planning.
Yeah.
Okay, so the three groups, the Scrum team comes to that. It's the product owner, development team, and the Scrum Master, right? That's who goes to sprint planning.
Yes.
And the way that it works is the product owner has developed a vision for the product before they even came to the sprint planning session. Okay, vision is a non-negotiable thing. They must understand the vision of their own product, okay? Or they must have a series of experiments that they want to do to validate what the vision should be, okay? That the team is going to work on. One of the two, okay? All right. So, because they may not know, they may have a theory of how to make some money, or how to delight a customer, or something like that. But until they actually do an experiment, they may not be able to solidify their vision, and their vision may change over time. Regardless, when they walk into sprint planning, they have to have this vision partially or fully developed. And they explain that to the team. They say, team, here's the vision. And based on this vision, before we even came into sprint planning, the product owner has collaborated with the developers in something called backlog refinement. And that's basically where you are fleshing out the requirements that are necessary in order to meet the objectives to meet the vision. Okay, so you got requirements that are going to meet objectives, which are then going to meet the vision. So the product owner has done a lot of thinking and has collaborated with the team and their stakeholders and maybe other subject matter experts a lot before they even come to sprint planning. Okay, so who's going to facilitate that?
Regarding the requirement?
Well, all the things that I just talked about before they even come into
I think the
sprint planning
product owner
facilitate
himself,
that.
it's his responsibility, the product owner's responsibility to.
It's the product owner's responsibility, but likely it's going to be the Scrum Master that's going to facilitate it, because the Scrum Master's primary job is facilitation. So if you have a weak product owner that doesn't know their job, the number one job of the Scrum Master in relationship to the product owner is to help the product owner and the development team find new and better ways to refine the backlog, to get it ready so that when we come into sprint planning, we're good to go. So self-organization is not where just one person goes and does one thing. It's in Scrum, it's a collaborative thing where everybody has individual responsibilities, but we all come together towards a common goal. And that common goal is actually called a sprint goal. And we develop that in the sprint planning. So let me walk you through how that happens. So product owner comes to the team in sprint planning and says, team, here's my vision. In order to go towards that vision, I believe in the next 2 weeks that we should focus on these first 2 or 3 objectives, okay? These are high-level objectives. And in order to meet these objectives, I believe, after doing refinement of the backlog with you guys and with the stakeholders and with other subject matter experts, that the first 5 things in the backlog that I've prioritized and ordered in this way are what's necessary in order to meet these objectives. What say you, development team? And the development team says, well, product owner, those first 5 things are great, but that 5th thing really isn't needed at all to meet the objective that you, towards the vision. And there's that 6th thing that's on the backlog actually does need to be in there. And you know, we forgot during refinement, there's 2 other things we need to add to the backlog that are also going to be needed in order to meet that objective. And so there's this discussion, this dialogue about what is needed in order to meet these objectives. And this becomes this agreement on what's needed becomes the sprint backlog. So the sprint goal consists of the vision, the objectives, the work list for the sprint. And now this work list is not set in stone. It's not, it's not a list of things you must do. It's the list of things we think preliminarily that we have to do in order to meet the objective. And then the last thing, which comes into self-organization, is how we're going to do it. So the development team self-organizes in the second part of sprint planning to decide how they're going to get the work done. And then during the sprint itself, they self-organize to do that same thing. And they meet on a daily basis to reflect on, hey, are we going in the right direction? Are we doing what's necessary in order to meet those objectives? So this is self-organizing that is facilitated by the Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master has to help facilitate that through the structure of the Scrum events. And that's how that works. Now, there's this little exercise that you might want to do in, let's say that, you had 10 people in a room and going through training. And it's a mixture of not just, people on the Scrum team, but also managers as well. And the trainer would, or the facilitator of this exercise would say, okay, guys, we're going to do this exercise. It has 2 iterations. In the first iteration, we're going to pair up. So everybody pair up. So everybody pairs up, right? One of you has to decide that they're the manager. The other one has to decide that they are the worker. If you are a manager in real life, you're not allowed to be the manager in the exercise, okay? I'm going to start the clock and you have 1 minute in this iteration. The manager in the exercise tells the worker the following commands. Go forward, go forward, go forward, go forward, stop, turn around, go left, go right. The worker does only what the manager tells them to do, and also counts how many steps they take in that 1 minute period. And the objective is to that we want to count. We want a high number of steps, right? So this first iteration is a command and control environment, the traditional project management environment. We go and do that. So, you know, people walk all over the building, but they have to be back within 1 minute, right? They then write up on the whiteboard the number of steps that they wrote, the workers do. Then there's a second iteration. Everyone is a worker. Everyone is a worker. They decide individually how fast to go left, to go right, to stop, back up, whatever, right? And they all have to count how many steps that they do within a 1 minute period. Okay, go. Everybody goes and does that. They come back after 1 minute, they write how many steps they took. Invariably, there are twice the number of steps taken in the second iteration compared to the first iteration. So that's a comparison between command and control and self-organization of the individual. Now we got to scale that on a team, and we got to work together to move the ball down the field together. So this is why we do sprint planning. This is why we do the daily stand-up. This is why we do sprint reviews together. This is why we do retrospectives together. And this is why we program together. Okay.
Yeah, very brief. I get my answer. Thank you, Jack.
Sure. What other questions are there?
Hello, Jack.
Can-
It's Junaid from Pakistan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I have a question. Can you please share some insight about your journey of agile transformation in some organization? Because in Pakistan, we work mostly in like hybrid environment, and it's difficult for us to totally remove the
It's hard for you to work, to do a transformation, or it's hard for you to get things done in the way that you're working? I need to understand the question.
yeah.
Question. Jack from one of the.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. What was the question? Hello?
Yeah, I think he wrote the question in the chat as well. I can read it from there. He said that, can you share your insight of waterfall to agile transformation? Any experience that you might share? Because in Pakistan, we don't work in pure agile, but it's a hybrid environment. So he's asking.
Don't do that. Don't do that. This is, you know, it's like I go to the doctor and I say, doctor, it hurts when I poke myself in the eye. And the doctor says, well, don't poke yourself in the eye, right? So people make choices to do certain things, and they do it for certain reasons. And there's a really good book on coaching by Lisa Adkins. And what Lisa says is, wherever the individual that's being coached, or the team is that's being coached, or the organization that's being coached is, you just show them 1 or 2 steps ahead of where they need to go. So you start to get momentum as to the direction that they should go. So your current state, you know, could be, your current state could be this hybrid approach, and you're not getting the outcomes that you seek. And the question is, how do you get better? That's really the question. So you have to decide what does good look like, and what outcomes do you seek? You have to start with that, and there has to be a sense of urgency. There's a guy named John Kotter, Kotter, and he's a very well-known organizational change management author. He's a PhD at Harvard University, and he has this model for organizational change, and it always the model, it's a circular model, but the start of the models is create a sense of urgency. So if you have no sense of urgency in change, then that's a problem. That's why you're not getting any type of transformational change, and you're still stuck in wherever you're at. So this pivoting, deciding to make this change, is built around one of two things. Either you have a visionary leader who knows the way, or can see the way and can lead the way, or you're on a burning platform and you're tired of being singed, and people are saying, I'm tired of being burnt. This, and they talk to other people that are tired of being singed or burnt. And so those people start to collaborate so that things get better. Okay. So that's what I would recommend as the starting point, to go from this hybrid approach, wherever you're at, is to try to find out is there a sense of urgency from the individuals being singed, or can you identify some type of visionary leader who you can educate so that they understand what the vision should really be?
Great. So I think we can take one last question to conclude the session, and it's from, let me browse. It's from Shahryar. How Agile help us to manage and deliver research-based projects?
Research-based, you mean R&D?
Yeah, R&D kind of projects in which we don't know anything. We just have one goal to achieve. We cannot break things up into small chunks, as Agile says, to commit very small chunk of objective and deliver it as soon as quickly. So in research-based project, we just need to go with research, and we need to figure it out how and when we can deliver. I just want to add one thing. I little bit have information about the spike concept in Agile. So, will spike is the only way, and spike is open-ended term. I mean, you can complete your spike in one sprint, or if you was not able to complete in one sprint, then take this spike into another sprint and keep it moving. Or we have any other better
technique? The concept, people misuse the term spike. Let me explain to you what it is and how it's related to Agile, okay? So spike is 2 or 3 hours worth of work, and it's to decide whether to go left or go right, or to understand how to break something down into something from big to small. So for example, let's say that I have 2 developers, and they're both great developers. They're both senior guys or gals. And one developer says, we should do it this way. And the other one says, we should do it the other way, the exact, a completely different way. Who's right? They're both smart people. They're both talented people. Who's right? Well, what you would do is you would do a spike. Each of them would do a spike of 2 or 3 hours worth of work. These are experiments. They would come back to the team. They would show their work to the team, and then the team would evaluate which way to go, left or right. That is a spike. The second kind of spike that I mentioned is associated with when you have something that's so big that you can't figure out how to estimate it. That's primarily where it's used. Okay, so you have something so big, you don't even know how to wrap your hands around it. So what you're going to do is you're going to do a spike to do some type of an experiment or a prototype. A prototype. Spikes are typically prototypes. A prototype is not a prototype. A prototype almost always is throwaway work. It's an experiment because you have a hypothesis that that something's going to work in a certain way, and you have to validate whether or not it's true. Now, in Agile, spikes are used. Agile Lean, spikes are used in many different frameworks and methodologies. So, for example, in SAFe, hold on for a second. Let me. Okay, can you see the Scaled Agile framework here? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So SAFe uses the concept of lean startup. Okay, and lean startup has a concept called MVP, minimum viable product. Now, spikes are a type of MVP. So let me give you an example of an MVP, the most basic first iteration type of MVP. Let's say that you guys are potential customers of mine and your prospective customers, and my company builds websites, and we go out to eat, and you're telling me about this great website that you want to have, and as you're talking to me, I take a piece of paper or even a napkin and a marker, and I start drawing out a low fidelity paper prototype on a napkin, okay, which is the user interface of the website. And at some point, I turn it and I show it to you and I say, does this delight you? Does this delight you? And you as the potential customer says, well, if you did this, if you did that, that I would be really super happy, right? What just happened there? Did I put anything into production? Nothing. What I did was I did what's called validated learning. And that's what a spike is. A spike is associated with validated learning. It's the minimal amount of work necessary to validate whether I should go left or should I go right. We call this pivoting or persevering also in lean startup. So when there's this big thing, right? An epic is like a huge initiative, right? And you know, the client says, well, you know, I want to decrease my risk, so I don't want to pay you all up front, right? Why are they saying that? Because they don't know if that epic is of value. So why build it all? Build the minimum amount of work necessary to validate the hypothesis of delighting the customer and delighting the users. The minimum amount of work. Don't build it all, don't fund it all, and then every 10 weeks maybe, go and have governance as to whether or not you should pivot or persevere. So, you know, it's a funding issue, and it's also these types of things are used for specific purposes. Now, if you have this big thing where it's R&D, where there's nothing delivered at the end, that is a product, okay? It's just research. Then you have a hypothesis that you're trying to validate. That's why you're doing the research. You have a theory that you're trying to validate. And there has to be some type of validation. And so do you wait 3 months before you deliver that validation? No, you have sub-theories in your theory, and you have a list of things that you need to validate that would either support or destroy your theory that something's good, or something would work, or something would delight a customer, or something would be beneficial. So these are the types of things you need to be able to think about it from that perspective, instead of just, well, I have to deliver something into production or whatever like that. That's not what spikes are for. That's not what MVPs are for. Now, when you do MVPs, you do it iteratively. So the first iteration of the MVP example that I gave you was a low fidelity paper prototype. The second iteration might be interactive wireframes. It's the minimum amount of work necessary in order to validate, am I delighting the customer? Can I make money? That's really what that's for. Okay, and then you do subsequent iterations, and by doing this, you're building the right thing the first time instead of building 80% of the features that nobody wants. Okay, so you do the bare minimum stuff to see, am I validating? Am I delighting the customer, or am I delighting the user? These are the things that are associated with MVP and another term called MMF, minimum marketable feature. Okay, these are small experiments. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
I hope
Great.
your answer, Shahryar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, good. So
All right,
shall we
guys.
conclude the session then, Jack?
All right, nice meeting you all, and good luck in the field.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jack, for giving us your time. And I see a lot of new things popping up in my head as well. And definitely try to get back to you afterwards. Good.
Okay,
This
let
session.
me know if I can be of service.
Absolutely. That will be really good. And this session is recorded, and hopefully we'll share the session within next 48 hours. Yeah.
Okay, you'll send me the link, right?
Absolutely. I will send you the link. Yeah. That would be good.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and bye from my side, and thanks again. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.